Hello everybody, Ben Marcus here, the Raptors Digest, tracking the Toronto Raptors 84-76 loss to the Miami Heat. A solo pod here today, and before we get into it, I've been pretty sick the past few days, so I apologize if I sound a bit congested on the podcast, but the Toronto Raptors came out and didn't do much in energizing Raptors fans across Canada, across anyone watching. There was a lot of Raptors fans cheering at the beginning of this one at free throws and all that, but their cheers were silenced as the game went along because the Toronto Raptors, they played solid defense, keeping the Miami Heat to 84 points, but the offense really just wasn't there tonight. The shots just weren't going in, and they weren't getting bad looks, to be fair. The Miami Heat stayed in the zone the whole game, and I guess it made sense too because the one issue with the zone is if you can get it inside, you collapse, and then you kick it back out, there's going to be open three shooters. But when the Raptors did that tonight, they had to, because the Heat do really good at rotating through this, but your open shot, there's someone running at you every time when you play the Miami Heat. But those are shots the Toronto Raptors, guys like Fred, Kyle, they usually hit those. Even if if you give them a bit of space and then you run out of them late, those are shots that usually go down for these Toronto Raptors players. But no one on the roster could hit a three tonight. Ibaka 0-4 from the 3-point line, Lowry 2 of 12, Fred VanVleet 1 of 11, McCaw 1 of 4, OG went 2 of 5, which is not bad, but 2 threes there, and Terrence Davis 0 of 5 from the 3-point line. Stanley Johnson also missed a step back one in the corner. So the shots just were not falling for anyone on the Toronto Raptors tonight, and because the Heat were packed up in a zone, obviously it's easier to guard the paint when you're in a 2-3 zone defense. And even when the Toronto Raptors got the ball inside to Ibaka, he got a lot of buckets tonight. He had 19 points, but 9 of 21 from the field, which isn't a horrible field goal shooting percentage. But if you looked at the ones he missed a lot of those little hooks, those little floaters that you usually see Ibaka make. He was a bit hesitant on all of his jumpers, and yeah, we don't mind him being hesitant on a couple threes, taking his time, being settled when he shoots them, but the middies for Ibaka, he's got to shoot them with confidence, let it fly as soon as he gets them, because he's one of the best mid-range shooters in the league, in my opinion. So I think I was just real confused when Ibaka would get the ball in the mid-post area around the free throw line. He'd hesitate. He'd let people get, the Heat's defense readjust to block him out. So that was real unfortunate to see from Ibaka. After the first quarter and he missed a couple of the easy ones, I was like, okay, once Ibaka gets the easy ones going, he's going to have a big night tonight. They say in that zone he's getting an easy 30-piece, but the shots just weren't going down from him, and the Raptors couldn't take advantage. They couldn't take advantage from the outside for obvious reasons, and they couldn't take advantage on the inside. So just a mess of a game all around. This is a tough loss to take where it's coming in the season. We've now lost 4 of our last 6. We've had a tough schedule, but going up against the Miami Heat as well, we're fighting with them for position, where we're trying to get to that second seed, because I think a lot of Raptors fans would agree we're not trying to play the Bucks in the second round. We'd like to inevitably match up with them in the conference finals if that could be the case. And the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference, they're all super strong. So if we can get, because it's going to be tough to get the first seed the way the Bucks are playing in the regular season, but if we can get that second seed where we play the Nets, like in all likelihood in the first round, that'd be a much easier matchup than the Pacers, the Sixers, whoever else ends up down there. And the Miami Heat are currently in that position. They're currently, them and the Celtics, not sure who will be after tonight, but those two teams are currently ahead of the Toronto Raptors, and we want to knock them out of their position. We want that second seed. This is a year in the Eastern Conference where seeding is going to matter very, very much, especially for that first round, second round matchup. So the Raptors got to come out here and start beating some of these upper tier teams tonight. We only get 3 games against the Miami Heat this season, and assuming we don't play them in the playoffs. And we've already lost the season series. So the home court, assuming we're tied with them at the end of the year, that already goes to the Miami Heat. The Boston Celtics, we lost our first game to them, and we obviously split the Christmas Day, the game after Christmas Day, back-to-back. So we're currently down 2-1 against those teams. And yes, the Toronto Raptors have struggled against good teams this season. They've gotten some wins, but they've struggled in terms of beating these top-tier teams, especially when compared to past years. Like last year, we were pretty solid against the upper-tier teams, and even the season before when we had the deep bench mob, we were able to knock down some teams in the regular season. We had a lot of teams scared, and then this year, yes, we've beaten the Celtics. Yes, we've had that nice win against the Lakers, but most games, it seems like the Toronto Raptors, they're always in it, but they're a little bit outmatched when it comes down the stretch, and a part of that has to do with injuries. The Toronto Raptors have sustained a lot of injuries this season, and right now we have Gasol, Norman Powell, and Pascal Siakam out. Those are 3 starting caliber players, and honestly, Norman Powell is probably going to maintain that starting position the way he was playing when he went down, and to be able to compete and play the level we're at, I guess it's something to take into account. Obviously, Raptors fans have really high standard for this team. We just won the NBA championship, but we can't get too ahead of ourselves in terms of our expectations. So I just want to say that because I've been sounding pretty negative on this pod. But I don't know. The Raptors gotta bounce back. They gotta get either people healthy or figure out how to close out games and not shoot an abysmal percentage from the 3-point line night in, night out. But there was some positives to take away from this game. OG Anunoby, he came out the first half, looked real bad. There's no other way to put it. Then he hit the final shot of the half and came out the start of the second half and looked real good. He was making some nice drives, a couple nice passes, getting some rebounds, and he ended the game with not 19 points. Serge Ibaka had 19 points, 12 rebounds, and 12 points, which is a solid box score for OG. 2 steals, 3 assists as well. And the start of the second half played really good basketball for about a stretch of 4 or 5 minutes. Made nice passes, rebounds, all that sort of stuff. But this is the thing about OG: consistency. It's usually game to game. We see him look comfortable and then not comfortable, comfortable then not comfortable. And against the Cavs, and obviously we didn't put out a podcast for that, but he looked really solid. He was knocking down shots, and it was real pleasing to the eye. And then tonight, it wasn't just a variance across games; it was a variance across quarters. Because the first 2 quarters was real tough. Then third quarter looked real nice, and then the fourth quarter went back to that passive, kind of shell-shocked looking OG. And I just want to see the guy play with that smoothness, play with that comfortability at all times throughout the whole course of a game. And I'm not asking him to knock down every shot. I'm not asking him to be the best 3-point shooter in the league or anything like that, anything out of the reason. But just to play within the flow of the game, be confident in his abilities, because he has a lot of the intangibles to be a really good player. And I'd like to see that consistency more from OG. And that inconsistency got him benched last game, and I'm surprised Nick Nurse went back to him as a starter as quickly as he did. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward with OG, because he had that amazing start to the season. His October, his first, I want to say 4 or 5 weeks of the year, was one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and obviously always plays remarkable defense. And I just love to see him get back to that consistency. And a couple other players. I thought Rondé played solid tonight. For what you expect from Rondé, made most of his shots around the rim, 13 points, 7 rebounds, and just a solid Rondé Hollis Jefferson game. Wouldn't mind to see him get put back in the starting lineup the way he played against the Cavs, and just when he's playing confident, he's a guy that looks good as well. And that's most of the positives. Serge Ibaka did, he had 19 and 10, which is a solid box score, but again, I talked about him in the beginning. And the defense of the Raptors tonight, I'm going to give them credit. They played a really solid defensive game. Limiting the Miami Heat to 84 points is a really solid showing, but unfortunately could not capitalize on the other end. And honestly, it's kind of impressive how well they play defense, because usually when your shots aren't going down at all, it tends to affect your defensive game. I guess they weren't turning the ball over as much, but there not many turnovers to the Raptors tonight, just 10, but when you're not scoring, it's easy for the other team to get confidence, and the Raptors did a good job of limiting them, and honestly, everyone played well on defense. OG, Serge, McCaw, there's a couple of lapses. Rondé played really well. Boucher was getting a lot of rebounds, but really couldn't translate to the offensive end. So we're just going to swing it straight into the segments, because there's a lot of stuff we have to talk about. But tonight, the spicy P-lay of the day. Go into a couple defensive plays, because when the Raptors played the way they did tonight on offense, it's got to go to something defensive. And Rondé Hollis Jefferson had a really nice block. I believe it was on Derrick Jones Jr., who's a really amazing athlete, dunker. He just floats in the air, whether he's doing a layup or a slam. And honestly, almost jumped over TD in a alley-oop that Lowry kind of stopped the possession before. It was a bit scary moment, but Derrick Jones Jr. gets real high on his jumps, and Rondé Hollis Jefferson was not having any of it. He was not trying to get postered tonight, and made sure he got the block on Derrick Jones Jr., and the ball ended up hitting Jones and going out of bounds. So that was a really nice sight, and Chris Boucher had another one that was, I believe it was Jones as well, actually. Jones was trying to poster people all night, and Boucher, another one. Get that garbage out of there. That's what we would have heard if Jack Armstrong was on the broadcast, but he wasn't. So a couple nice blocks to the Raptors. A few positive plays on the defensive end, but not all plays can be the spicy P-lay of the day. Some just make you say, oh, geez. And tonight, a couple OGs plays of the day. One of them is going to Patrick McCaw, because Patrick McCaw was objectively bad tonight. Did nothing on the court. Had one of those games that we talked about with Patrick McCaw. Has a tendency to just really float around, not have an impact in any sort of way, because he's a jack of all trades, but doesn't have that one skill to really fall back on when things aren't really going for him. And tonight, things weren't really going for Patrick McCaw, and had one of those nights where he was 3 points, 1 assist, 1 rebound in 28 minutes, 1 of 8 from the field, 1 of 4 from the 3-point line. And for the OG's play of the night, had one of the worst layups I've ever seen in my life. I know the shot clock was expiring. He probably thought he had less time than he did, but he was underneath the rim. No one in front of him. Serge Ibaka kind of saved the ball and bounced to him, and I don't even know what he was doing. It didn't make sense. Had the ball, he just threw it off the other side of the backboard in the most awkward motion. Missed 2 other layups as well tonight. One was a reverse layup and one was an open kind of right-handed banker. I don't know what was going through McCaw's head tonight. Really wasn't into the game. McCaw has shown some positive signs as of late, especially after that Christmas Day, just atrocious performance. So hopefully Point McCaw gets back on track, or Nick Nurse really scales back the minutes. And, the one interesting thing tonight, too, is McCaw got a lot of run. OG got a lot of run in the first half where he was really struggling. And O'Shea Brissett got no minutes at all. And he's a guy, I know he's not known for his offense and anything like that, but maybe his energy could have changed something for the Raptors. And he is a decent 3-point shooter. We saw that in preseason. We've seen him take a few in the past few games since he's been getting run. I don't know, if things aren't working, I'm surprised you don't give him a chance if you're Nick Nurse. I guess Stanley Johnson got some run tonight as well, and he didn't do much with it. Took a wild step back 3 in the corner. Played solid defense though, but this isn't the game you test Stanley Johnson out, in my opinion. He's a guy that he's an OG light. He's a guy that does all the little things, but can provide defense, can be a decent 3-point shooter, but isn't going to take over, give you instant offense. So when you need that from your team, it's a weird time to throw Stanley Johnson into the fire. But there's a lot of people looking for Stanley Johnson to get minutes, and maybe Stanley Johnson was Nick Nurse's attempt to switch up the offensive flow. But yeah, those are the OGs moments, and we have one more OGs because I want to leave the other technical for the DeMar Carroll Gold Star Award. But the final OGs is Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse has been getting a lot of technicals, so maybe he has a bad boy reputation in the NBA these days. But I don't know if everyone heard on the broadcast, but the microphone around the Miami Heat's nets, it's extremely loud, so you can hear it when people are screaming and when the ball hits the rim. It's real emphatic, but you could hear Nick Nurse. And he's sometimes when he's yelling out plays, and at one point he just screamed out travel. He just literally yelled travel. It was heard onto the microphone. It was heard on the broadcast. And the ref just teed him up. Teed him up for no reason. Didn't say anything provocative. Didn't say anything bad. He just yelled out travel and got a technical. That was real weird. That was definitely an OG's moment. But we have bigger moments to talk about with technicals tonight. And so we're just going to swing it straight into the Mary Carroll Gold Star Award. And tonight, that's going to Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick Nunn, my least favorite NBA player, coming out on the court and just being a complete mephus to Kyle Lowry the whole game. And he was talking smack. He didn't even play that solid. I know that he were getting wins and whatever, but he was 1 of 9 himself from the 3-point line, only had 7 points. And I had a few assists. And he's a good basketball player. I am not going to take credit I'm going to give credit where credit's due. He's pretty good at the game of basketball, but just his antics and his off-the-court stuff, you've heard the stories about him and how he poured boiling water over his girlfriend's face, just poured a steaming pot of water over his girlfriend's face. Just seems like a real lunatic. There's no real other way to put it, but yeah, and tonight, continuing to get on with just not even fun antics, not Lance Stevenson blowing into someone's ear, not Patrick Beverley just hyping everyone up, and I know that gets under people's skin too, and that's fair enough, but he was straight. At one point, Kyle Lowry, and this is what sparks the Gold Star Award, Kyle Lowry's just literally playing defense, ready to be in denied position, has his hand on Kendrick Nunn, and then Kendrick Nunn just starts slapping his hands all dramatically, it's like Lowry's not allowed to play defense on him. And the refs come over after Nunn slapped Lowry twice, and Lowry's like, what is this guy doing? And he puts his hand back on him in denied position. Nunn slaps him again, and the ref hits them both with a technical. It was a double technical awarded. Lowry literally didn't do anything. He was just playing defense, and then they give him a double tech. Nunn was slapping him, and with Lowry with his hurt thumb and the wrist issues in the past, it's he could have injured him, slapping him. That might be a bit of a stretch, but just a complete moron, in my opinion. Kendrick Nunn, definitely getting the DeMarco Gold Star Award from me. But yeah, the Toronto Raptors, we're gonna swing it back to more in this game stuff. The Raptors gotta learn how to get a few more W's with this shorthanded roster. I know we have a lot of our main scorers, a lot of our offensive producers. They're out with injury, and I think people underrate Gasol and himself and just how the offense usually runs through him when he's on the court. Then when he's not, we usually run the Lowry Ibaka pick and roll, which has been our only real consistent source of offense during the last stretch of games. Then obviously Spicy P is our number one option right now, and Norman Powell was averaging 20 piece for a lot of this season. So I think everything will be fine, assuming we get back healthy close to the playoffs. I think everything will be good, but it'd be nice to get a few wins against the Heat, get in a few wins. As I mentioned in the podcast, we're fighting for seeding. Seeding is going to be extremely important this year, and yes, I believe we could beat anyone in the Eastern Conference, but we want obviously the road of least resistance. So hopefully the Raptors can get a few more W's, get back on track, because we lost 4 of the last 6. But I'm sure the team will be fine. Lots of fun games coming up, so stay tuned to the Raptors Digest. You're the best to make this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all the cool stuff. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.